So one thing that people always ask me about when it comes to beats and the way I make beats is like how I do my hi-hats. So I just wanted to go over a few different sort of techniques that I use and I'm going to go from the most basic, because hi-hats play such a big role in hip-hop as it is at the minute, and rap music and R&B music and pop music even. These 808 hi-hats, that they're not, I don't know why we still call them 808 hi-hats, because they're just hi-hats they're just chopped digital drum machine hi-hats now that have just been manipulated to a point where they've kind of completely got their own character. But there's a bunch of different ways to do the same thing. There's a bunch of different ways to do more interesting things. So I'm going to go over like just a bunch of different ways to do it. Obviously, I'm working in Ableton. I know a lot of producers work in other software. Most of the stuff is just theory that will apply to any software, but there is one or two things that is Ableton specific that I'll leave to the end, like using the drum rack in Ableton, but I'll get to that at the end. So I'll start with the most basic, which is kind of pointless me even saying because everyone knows this. So I've programmed a rough beat. I haven't put a melody on it, I've just done something so that we've got a reference to listen to. No point me playing that through, to be fair. So I just as you see there, I may as well give you a few little Ableton tips if you're sort of new to Ableton. If you highlight an area and hit Command-Shift-M, you'll create a MIDI region within that highlighted sort of section on the particular track. So Command 1 and 2 are also really useful because they move the size of your grid up and down. So when you're programming hi-hats, that's something useful to bear in mind, and if you hit Command 3, it switches it to triplets, so you've got loads of options there. So the most basic way to do it, that you hear on a lot of hit songs, just literally have this hi-hat going all the way through, but it is the most basic. It is kind of the most boring way to do it. No, not like that. It would be twice as fast. That's a common pattern these days. So that's the most obvious way to go about it. And then you see sort of like people might go, this is still, as far as I would say, sometimes it's the right exact thing to do, but this is like a really basic way of like going like this or something. So that's sort of a basic way of getting a sort of slightly more interesting hi-hat pattern. Something that I like to do a lot, but it's usually when I'm being just lazy and I'm wanting to not rush the beat, but sometimes I don't necessarily want the hi-hats to be some big feature, but I still want them to have some dynamic to them. So I'll rather than layering hi-hats physically, which I'm going to talk about next, I'll do the sort of layering, but all within one patch. So it might go, I don't know. That was bad. So that's another way that you can do it, and obviously you can get as creative or sort of whatever as you want with this, because you could maybe like pitch it so they do some rolls and do some cool stuff like that, which is good at the minute. I like the rolls. Oh, that was a bit crap, but you know what I mean. So it's not the best pattern, but you get what I mean. You can do it all in one sort of window. But like I would say that group of things that I've just demonstrated there are the like most basic ways to go about it, which you don't get any extra points for doing it less basic ways, should I say. But I think on a creative point of aspect, you can actually get some interesting things by doing what I'm about to do next, which is layering hi-hats. So you might, let's say that is the rhythm you want to sort of carry the track, or maybe not. Maybe you want to go like have a few gaps. And then you might want to do a little pitch up and a down. And that might be the basis for your track. So you select that Command B. Oh no, that's Fruity. Command D in Ableton to just copy things across, to duplicate. And those little pitched things there give it a little variety. So I've already loaded another hi-hat, so we'll just play with that. So you might do a different rhythm with this second one. He's filtering down. And then you might pan one over to the left just a little bit and the other one over to the right just a little bit. I've heard that done. Like I know that's specifically in some Drake tracks. Can't remember what tracks, but I remember listening to those in headphones and hearing the separation of the hi-hats, thinking how cool that was. But when you're listening, just generally listening, it's not something you're necessarily going to pick up on. So, and then you might layer another one. I've got another pattern layered already, just to save time, where you might sort of use it for like hi-hat rolls. So just again filter off, and these are all different hi-hat sounds as well, which give the track just again a bit more character. This just lets you work in a different way, you see. And then obviously I'm kind of rushing this just for the sake of showing the video, but so that might be the basis for your whole groove. And then obviously you've got the option of an open hi-hat as well. And I tend to keep open hi-hat, it's pretty simple, but I don't always do the same pattern. I'd switch it up. And I would always group the hi-hats. I don't know exactly how you do it in Fruity. I know that you can create a summing stack or something to do the same type of thing, but what's useful about that is then you can work with all the hi-hats as if they're one hi-hat. So I like to sort of roll off all the bottom end so it's on an equal sort of level. I like to sometimes, you can even put a little delay that you can barely hear. So this is a Ableton's inbuilt delay. You can use any delay, but this is really good because you can just quickly ping pong it, quickly filter it out, and just like make it really subtle. And it just gives it some atmosphere, and you would never necessarily even notice it in the mix, but just does something. So that's, and obviously there's a million variations of patterns you could do there, but you see, by layering them, it also lets you do things when it comes to the arrangement, because this might be for the chorus, but then the verses might start by going. Then you've got something to break it up and something to build with, and it's nice to work with because it's just right in front of you. And then the next part of the verse might build up and it might go. Might bring in the open hi-hat for a bit. And then the next part of the verse might bring in the fast hat, so. You get my point. And then you might only have all the things playing together for the chorus, or you might use this pattern for a different section to give it a whole different feel again. So you've got a lot of options by just muting and unmuting or deleting and turning off channels and whatnot. So I think that's good. So that's that anyway. As far as programming or playing them in like that, I often layer my hi-hats that way if I'm doing it individual things at a time. But another thing that I like to do, and this is where we get a bit specific to Ableton, but again, if you've got other software that works in a similar way, it's still going to be useful for you. Or if you don't use Ableton yet and you're thinking about it, this might be a thing that you didn't realise you could do in Ableton. So I'm just going to find any random hi-hat, and it just needs to be a tight hi-hat really. So this is a drum rack, and I might just change that sound slightly. I've got a controller here, that's what, I'm not just magically making it do it. I want to make it a bit tighter. So again, let's go down a similar route. So you might want that same sort of a general groove to be like that. So there you've got your hi-hat, and it's also nice because you only have one channel. You have one channel per sort of square on the little drum rack in Ableton. So then what I would then do is copy that across and go into Ableton's MIDI effects and get a note length and an arpeggiator and drop that on. So then on your second, so your first hi-hat is just the hi-hat on its own. The second one, we have a note length which basically controls how long every note length is when you hit that. So I would put it to get us going an eighth note, because we're working in eighths notes. And then I would take my arpeggiator off of sync, because when it's on sync, it can just be a little bit temperamental, especially if you're jamming it out. Whereas off sync, you can kind of you can customize it a bit more. I just think it's better. And then I would duplicate that again, and maybe just pitch it down. Oh wait, one thing I would do is make the voices just one. So my first one is just the hi-hat on its own. The second one is a hi-hat like roll, but the same pitch. The third one is another hi-hat roll. I'm not going to change the speed, but I am going to change the pitch in Ableton's simpler by going to controls, navigating to the transpose thing, and just pitching it up a few. So now I've got two options of pitch. Then I would copy it over again and maybe pitch it down. Maybe trim it down a little bit more. And maybe even make the rate of the roll a little bit different. Just gives it a different flavour. So let's just go with that for now, because now you can just simply work it in blocks, and because you've made sure that the note length is going to be exactly a quarter note every time, and the speed of your arpeggiator is going to be like consistent per channel, each one of these, not channel but note on the pad or whatever, however you want to say it. Then you can just jam. You can either jam it with a controller or even just your keyboard, literally, like Literally, I'm just hitting my keyboard. So let me just demonstrate that by how you can just get a groove going easily without even any piece of equipment. I don't know why it's glitching, but in theory it works. You can just be going. So yeah. But if you've already programmed it in, you can just go. And you can go as far as you want to go with it, really. For the sake of this, I'm not gonna go on and on. So that might be the pattern that you go with. And then you haven't got to think about making the grid bigger, smaller. It kind of just eliminates a few little tedious jobs, but you've got to do those little tedious jobs at the beginning, like we did when we was setting all of this up. So one more thing you can do in this mode, and you can do it in other ones as well, but this is like, it gives you just another option, is you can use, if you've got like the full Ableton suite, you can go into MIDI effects, but the Max for Live MIDI effects, and get the LFO module. Let me just make sure. So you can get the LFO module and put that on, say, this one, and you can use that LFO to trigger the, how do I do it now? Oops. Oh yeah, hit map. I couldn't read it. So I can map this LFO to, say, the pitch, and then I can decide how deep I want that pitch to be. And I can change, obviously. Obviously that sounds pretty shit right now. And that's because of the offset, I think. It just lets you have a constantly moving sort of pitch effect. So it's pitching your hi-hats around. So then when you trigger that one in your session, you can go, let's just make them all that just for the sake of it. So yeah, that just gives you another way to play with your hi-hats, which is and obviously you can customize that as much as or as little as you want and explore the possibilities that you can do when combining the LFO with the, well, it could make that go quicker, could change that it's only ever going up, so see what I mean? So yeah, so basically the message behind this whole video is there's more than one way to do the same thing, and I personally do a combination of all of them because sometimes I just get bored working in exactly the same way. Sometimes I'll play stuff live, sometimes I'll program it in. You just do whatever feels right on the day, but it's good to be aware of all different ways to approach doing the same thing. And there's more that you can do with hi-hats by using different samples, but for this particular style, that basically has got you covered and more than what you would ever need to know about different techniques to go about making your hi-hats, especially in Ableton with the use of the drum rack. So yeah, subscribe and like the video, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra.